Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the Dwarfs. They are taking on the Norskins. This is actually a community cast sent in by Rightist, who said he had some replays for me, and I've been very busy with work over the past week or so, so I haven't had a ton of time to play my own battles. I don't typically do community casts. I do them occasionally, but both these guys are very good players, tournament proven, and so we're definitely in for a great battle. So let's take a look at the builds. We've got Ungrim Iron Fist leading the way for the Dwarves, stripped of all his abilities. This is definitely by far and away the most competitive Lord choice for the Dwarves. He's relatively cheap, unbreakable, anti-large armor piercing, 120 armor, you know, all the good stuff. In terms of front line, he's got some miners with blasting charges backed up by Dwarf Warriors, pretty common pick against Norsca, 2 units of Giant Slayers, 3 Rangers with great weapons. You don't see these guys too often, but they do have an arc of fire, although they have significantly less range and armor than Thunderers. Personally, I prefer Thunderers a little bit more, but Rangers are definitely very good as well, particularly, of course, the Regiment of Renowned Ulthuar's Raiders with their Marked by Ulthuar ability does give minus armor, minus missile resistance, and less missile block chance if they have it to begin with. 2 units of cannons and 2 additional Slayers. So for the Norskins here, you can see they've got out front the Distraction Soul Crusher, going to be soaking up some of those cannon shots. The reason I say Distraction Soul Crusher is because the Mammoth is one of those units that you can't not dedicate resources to taking it down, but it's just such a meat bag. It has 1100 HP baseline, so it takes some resources to take down, and that will take away from dedicating resources to the rest of the fight. We've got Wulfric the Wanderer on a chariot, a whole line of Marauder champions with great weapons for the front line, which is an interesting choice against the Dwarves. As you guys know, I'm really not a fan of Marauder champions, just based on their stats. They're not cost effective, although they can be good in this matchup. We'll see how they do here. He's got 5 of them, Norscan Warhounds as well, looks like 2, maybe a couple more hidden in the woods on the far side, a Shaman Sorcerer, Lord of Metal on a chariot. And that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let's get the battle underway. You can see the Dwarves have taken up their defensive position in this kind of plaza area here with this obelisk. So they will be obviously on the defense here with their artillery. You can see that Soul Crusher there trying to dodge some shots. Of course, it's just got such a big hitbox, and this is the issue with the Mammoth, is it has the biggest hitbox of any monster in the game. That's one of the reasons why it has so much health, but yeah, it's very easy to hit with missile units. Although, of course, dedicating resources to the Soul Crusher does mean that he's not dedicating resources to taking down Wulfric in terms of the cannon fire. Speaking of fire, Blasting Charge is going to come in and blast out a bit of Wulfric's HP. Didn't do too much, but it did waste most of the Blasting Charge volley there, so that in and of itself was a pretty good engagement. Shaman Sorcerer going to come and almost do the same thing over here, but he gets caught up a little bit and takes a nasty volley from those Rangers with great weapons. I actually think I'll have to compare the missile damage, but I do think that Rangers with great weapons do more missile damage than the Thunderers. I'll have to check that after the fact. But Giant Slayers and Slayers collapsing on this Hound, going to take it off the field relatively quickly. Over here, these Slayers, they were sitting on top of the cannon crew, which did allow the the regular Norscan Wolves, unfortunately, to get at the cannon crew a little bit. They didn't do enough damage or take them offline, though, so all is good at the end of the day. And now you can see the main line engagement getting underway here. You can see Ungrim Iron Fist going to get in here, use his Axe of Dargo. Wulfric doing a little bit of a drive-by swipe there. But yeah, very nice Transmutation of Lead coming down from the Metal Sorcerer there. Transmutation of Lead's a really nice spell against the Dwarves in general because you get that minus 26 melee attack, I believe, and it's additional weapon damage as well. Looks like it just dropped there, but I guess if we look at the Shaman Sorcerer, who's actually currently getting routed off by the missile pressure here, so he was able to get off that one Transmutation of Lead and then just gets picked off by these Rangers with great weapons there. Actually goes down. Ooh, man, nasty amount of missile pressure there. You can see the balance power turning slightly in the favor of the Dwarves at this point, but that Distraction Soul Crusher still online, and the Marauder Champions obviously will beat up Dwarf Warriors without too much issue, and Miners, I mean, they have obviously armor piercing, better combat stats all around. They are a significantly more expensive unit, so you would hope they'd do well, but the Giant Slayers will be able to put up a little bit of a fight. here due to the fact that they're unbreakable, and they also have some armor piercing, but it's not going to be great. You can see the Warhounds getting back, compromising these Rangers here. This cannon is still online, though. Looks like line of fire being interrupted by the Obelisk a little bit here, but the Soul Crusher, marked by Ulthwar, going to lose all of its missile resistance. I think the Mammoths have 15 baseline. Let's see here. Nope, I guess they don't have any baseline. That's very interesting. But anyway, you can see Marauders Champion's going to collapse on these Slayers, and the Rangers trying to pull back here. The Slayers having to be used as kind of a last-ditch defense here, both the Giant Slayers and the regular Slayers. And man, I just love the animations for the Giant Slayers. They look so cool. But yeah, Champions only have 80 armor to begin with, so even regular Slayers will do okay against them. It's not necessarily going to be an efficient trade, but they'll do alright. They can definitely handle their own. That being said, Wulfric still very much online. The cannon's trying to turn and fire on him, but he's going to get in here and knock them around a little bit. He's going to have to be careful, though. Rangers and Slayers still on station. And, of course, Ungrim Iron Fist still perfectly healthy, working his magic with the Axe of Dargo, chopping through these Marauders here, the Champions, that is. Yeah, it's too bad Champions aren't more cost-effective, because they would be good in a multitude of other matchups, and they've done relatively well here, but this is probably the only matchup that I would consider taking them in. Even then, like, armor-piercing missile pressure, you just don't have any missile block chance, you have no mitigation whatsoever, you know, other than the physical resistance from your enrage once you get to the higher tier, but even then, it's only 11%, so it's really not that much mitigation. Dwarves definitely have some tools to deal with armored infantry. But, yeah, at this point, things are looking a little bit dicey for the Dwarves. A lot of the missile units have been compromised. This one cannon is still online, but the Soul Crusher coming back from route is going to be a big problem. Going to start some terror routing in the Dwarf ranks. Lots of Champions still online, too. You can see the Giant Slayers fighting the Champions almost to the bitter end here. The Champions will probably just rout, maybe, or they might finish off the Slayers before they rout. Let's watch these guys last stand here as they duke it out. We'll kind of get another view so you guys can see the overarching battle a little bit here. We'll watch these Slayers make their last stand as they, yeah, they're going to be all done pretty much. So, that being said, the Slayer King, though, is still online. He's taken some damage, but this cannon getting back online is very key as well. It's able to rout off the Soul Crusher with the missile pressure there. Plenty of Dwarf Warriors and Miners also coming back from route as well. These Giant Slayers over on the far side taking on some Champions. Again, they will get cut through, but they'll be able to do some damage in return, certainly. The biggest threat at this point is this Chariot here. Wulfric on the Chariot. You can see the balance power starting to shift pretty decisively against the Dwarves as a lot of their units get shut down. There's still just so many Champions here to deal with, and it looks like he actually dropped the artillery piece and fled with the cannon crew there. Oh, fled. I'll call it a tactical retreat, but they probably are going to get caught up by the Champions still because the Champions are just barely faster, and now they've hit their charge animation, it looks like, so it could be rough. That cannon crew, if he loses that cannon crew, he's going to have a hard time taking down Wulfric the Wanderer. That being said, the other cannon did just come back from route. Yeah, the Marauder Champions here, they're going to get hit by some armor-piercing missiles from the Rangers with great weapons there. They do take quite a bit of damage, and yeah, man, the Rangers with great weapons, not a unit I use too often, but they are a very powerful unit just because of their missile damage. I mean, they're not... I like the other Dwarf range units a little bit better. The Thunderers give you better range. Bugman's Rangers have the regen. Obviously, they don't have the AP, but... yeah, I do see players use the Rangers with great weapons to pretty good effect. So, I mean, they're definitely a good unit. I just prefer, I think, to take other Dwarf Skirmishers. Although in this matchup, I can definitely see the merit of the Rangers there. But yeah, you can see kind of a final stand here of Sabor Slayers and Ungrim Iron Fist. There's only this one group of Champions left, pretty much. This other one is incredibly low and probably going to be shot down by the Rangers there. Wulfric springing himself free. But the Slayers and Ungrim will probably be able to finish off these Champions here. Champions just aren't able to do enough damage to Ungrim because of their subpar stats. Only 38 attack versus Ungrim's 35 defense, which granted, 35 defense for a heroic unit is not very good. But the fact that they only have 38 attack means they're going to be getting just barely above a 35% chance to hit. I think it's 35% chance if I remember right, but anyway, so a lot of the hits just aren't going to make contact on Ungrim, whereas his 70 melee attack will easily make hits against the Marauder Champions, so it's going to be a pretty rough engagement for the Norskins overall, especially with the Slayers they're supporting, kind of soaking some of the hits there. But yeah, you can see this trusty cannon crew has managed to make it just about back to their guns here on the edge of the plaza, and if they get their guns back online and take a couple of shots at Wulfric, it could turn that balance of power real quick. Because right now it's definitely in the Norscan's favor, but Wulfric's the only one left at this point that's not routing off. So let's see. It looks like he's going to cycle charge Ungrim probably a little bit, and these Slayers here. But again, the cannon being online here, he probably wants to try and push over and get on that cannon and shut it down, or else he's going to face a nasty volley here, and just one or two solid hits from that cannon would be enough to take down Wulfric. And you can see 2 solid hits there. It looked like enough to do some good damage to Wulfric, and all of a sudden his leadership goes down, and the balance of power instantly shifts pretty much. Interesting how one shot on a Lord can make that much of a difference in this kind of late game situation here. But yeah, Ungrim coming in there, getting a nice little swipe as Wulfric drives by. And it shouldn't be too much more in Wulfric. Yeah, one more hit there from Ungrim, and he is routed off. So a very nice comeback win for the Dwarves. That clutch cannon crew getting back on there was definitely the clincher. The cannons, unfortunately, I mean, they definitely dealt with the Soul Crusher, which in and of itself is effective. They didn't have a lot of other good targets to shoot at, but yeah, you can see the champions did well in the front line. There's no question. Racking up tons and tons of kills against Dwarf infantry, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. I mean, granted, you're only mostly going up against miners and Dwarf warriors, so it's not that impressive at the end of the day. But I do think that they can be a decent pick in this matchup if you don't want to take a Famir build. Famir, you know, they're good in this matchup. Their magic damage is a little tough, but the armor sundering is pretty hard to pass up, in my opinion, especially if you're taking, if you want to try and take a shielded front line, so you're not quite as vulnerable to the missile play there. You know, it's a bit of give and take. I'd be interested to hear these guys' thoughts if they do end up watching this. But the Soul Crusher, it's an interesting investment. You know, I might take the regular War Mammoth just to make it a bit cheaper. The Soul Crusher's extra leadership and abilities are pretty nice. But, yeah, this big of an investment is pretty rough against the Dwarves, who have so many armor-piercing missiles. Granted, that did keep the armor-piercing missiles off of the Marauder champions, so maybe, you know, one distraction Mammoth might be worthwhile. I don't know that I would necessarily take the Soul Crusher, but it's still, you know, still a decent pick against the Dwarves. Can definitely soak some of the damage so that it's not directed at, say, like Wulfric, who managed to rack up 148 kills. So, although the kill totals on the Soul Crusher aren't that impressive in and of themselves, it still was a useful tool to have. I just think that maybe a cheaper option would have been a bit better. The Slayers definitely carrying their own here. It would have been nice to see Ridest under Karak Kadrin's colors just for thematic sake. But still, the Slayers, 76, 125, 76, and 78. A lot of those coming against, obviously, elite infantry like Marauder champions. A lot of those also coming against Hounds as well. But yeah, they definitely held their own there in the back line. This front line just got crushed pretty hard, but that's more or less what you expect. That you just want to have them hold for long enough to let these missile units deal their damage, and they definitely did. Able to take down that Soul Crusher there. Rangers with Great Weapons didn't end up getting that many kills, but again, they were mostly focused on high-value targets. They were able to take down the Shaman Sorcerer pretty easy, which was a great pick. He only got 13 kills. Pretty much had almost zero impact on the battle, other than that one Transmutation of Lead in the front line. But yeah, with the Metal Sorcerer, I think you can take Plague of Rust, and if you want to go with like a Plague of Rust Famir build, you know, you can start our armor and not necessarily have to use the champions with the great weapons. But I'm not saying that's necessarily the most competitive pick in this particular matchup. The champions might be better if you have like another unit to distract the armor-piercing missiles. My biggest concern with them is against the Dwarves is the armor-piercing missiles that they can take. Like, let's just quickly compare Thunders with the Rangers, because I am curious about their difference in missile damage, if there is much of a difference there. But let's go ahead and take a look at the Dwarves, and yeah, so Thunders have only 19 missile damage, so yeah, significantly more missile damage on the Rangers with great weapons. That's pretty much the main difference in terms of their missile attack. Obviously, they have about half the range as well, so you know, it's a bit of a toss-up. Would you rather have the firepower of the Rangers with great weapons, as in the damage, or would you rather have the range of the Thunderers? There's some other aspects to consider as well. Thunderers are slightly more expensive, 50 points more expensive to be exact. They have shields and armor, whereas the Rangers with great weapons do not. However, the Rangers with great weapons also do armor piercing and melee, which is something. They don't have the best melee stats, either of them, but it does look like Thunderers are going to be a little bit better off in terms of their melee defense, which again is the most important stat in terms of a melee combat. So it's definitely a toss-up. You know, I can definitely see both being useful. I think that in certain situations the Rangers can be pretty useful, especially if you're not facing an opposing ranged faction. Like against Norsca, obviously, you may see a few of the throwing axe infantry, but they're not a super common pick in that matchup, so I do think that your Rangers are going to be relatively safe from counterfire, because that's, I think, their biggest issue when you compare them to the other Dwarf skirmishers. A lot of them have shields, so not having the shields and the lower armor of the Rangers with great weapons means that they're extra vulnerable to opposing skirmishers, so I definitely not recommend them against factions like the High Elves, Wood Elves, you know, anyone that can take a heavy range component, the Empire, that sort of thing. I would definitely not recommend that to Rangers with great weapons, but against a faction like Norsca that typically doesn't take much range at all against the Dwarves, can be a pretty solid pick, as we were able to see there. So thanks for Ridist. Thanks to Ridist for sending in that replay. Hope you all enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.